These are stories where love meets betrayal. Stories that make you see life a little differently.
They say betrayal always comes from the ones you trust the most. I used to think that was just another quote, something people say when they're hurt. But the truth is, I didn't understand it until the day my best friend destroyed my world. My name is Anna, and this is the story of how my best friend, Mia, betrayed me in the most painful way imaginable. I met Mia when we were 15. We sat next to each other in school. She was loud, confident, full of life. I was the quiet one, the listener. Maybe that's why our friendship worked so well. We balanced each other. Even back then, she was beautiful. Dark hair, green eyes, and that smile that could melt anyone's heart. Boys followed her everywhere, but she never seemed to care. She always said, "Anna, when you love someone, make sure they love you twice as much back." Funny thing is, years later, she forgot her own words. After school, life took us different ways for a while. I went to college in another city, studied psychology. Mia stayed home, started working in a small design studio. But we never lost touch. Every night, texts, calls, laughter. When I met David, I couldn't wait to introduce them. He was charming, intelligent, and he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. The three of us became inseparable. Trips, dinners, birthdays. Mia always said how lucky I was to have him. And David, he liked her energy, her jokes. He said she reminded him of the spark people lose when they grow up. I didn't think much of it. Why would I? They were my two favorite people. Years passed. David and I got married. Mia was my maid of honor. She cried more than I did that day. When she hugged me at the wedding, she whispered, "You deserve the world, Anna." If only I knew what those words would mean later. It started small, little things, messages between them about harmless stuff, surprise parties, gifts, work. I saw nothing wrong. Then came the glances. You know the kind. Quick, like lightning, but enough to spark a strange feeling in your stomach. Sometimes I'd catch them laughing about something I wasn't part of. When I asked, they'd say, "Inside joke, Anna, you wouldn't get it." And I believed them. Until one night, David said he had to go on a business trip. Mia came over to keep me company. We ordered pizza, watched an old movie, and talked until late. When she left, she forgot her phone on the couch. I noticed it when I was cleaning up. I picked it up and saw a message pop up on the screen. From David. It said, "Miss you already. Last night felt like a dream." For a second, I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. I told myself, no, it can't be what I think. I unlocked her phone. There were dozens of messages, their little secret world, hidden in plain sight. He called her my light. She sent him photos from our living room, from my kitchen. They talked about me like I was some stranger they had to keep happy. At first, I couldn't even cry. It felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. I sat there until morning, just staring at the phone. Every message burned like fire. Every "I love you" was another knife. When David came home, I didn't say a word. I just looked at him and asked, "How was your trip?" He said, "Fine, just meetings." His voice didn't shake. He kissed my forehead. I remember thinking, how do people lie so easily? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to his breathing beside me. I thought about every moment, every word, every time they'd laughed together. And then I realized something. The worst part wasn't that they betrayed me, it was that they did it together. Two people I loved more than anyone else in this world. In the morning, I took Mia's phone to her house. When she opened the door, her face turned pale. I can explain, she said. Can you? I whispered. Can you explain what part of I miss you already I misunderstood? She said nothing, just tears. I handed her the phone and left. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of her. I just walked home, closed the door, and sat on the floor until it got dark. That's when the crying came. Hours passed. I deleted their pictures, blocked their numbers, but memories don't have a delete button. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear her laugh. The same laugh that once made me feel safe, now it haunts me. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. I didn't speak. I didn't eat. Time felt heavier than ever before. On the third morning, my mother showed up. She knocked on the door until I opened. The moment she saw my face, she understood. She didn't ask questions. She just held me. And it was the first time since everything happened that I felt human again. We sat at the table. She made tea, chamomile, my childhood favorite. She pushed the cup toward me. Anna, she said softly, whatever it is, you're not alone. For a moment, I wanted to tell her. I wanted to let everything spill out like broken glass on the floor. But the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I asked, Mom, why do people betray the ones who love them? She looked at me long and thoughtfully. Because some hearts are weak, she said, and weak hearts always choose the easiest way, not the right one. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. Weak hearts. Was that what David had? Or Mia? Or maybe both? I didn't know anymore. The following week, David acted as if nothing happened. He brought flowers, cooked dinner, tried to kiss me. It was like living in parallel realities, one where he played the perfect husband, and another where I knew the truth. One evening, he sat next to me on the couch and said, Anna, you've been distant lately. Is something wrong? I looked at him and wondered, how many lies can a man tell before his face starts to crack? I forced a smile. No, I'm just tired. He nodded. He believed it, or pretended to. Maybe lies were easier than facing the truth. Days turned into weeks. I carried the secret like a stone on my back, heavy, cold, always there. But something inside me was changing. The sadness slowly hardened into anger, a quiet, steady kind of anger, not the kind that screams, but the kind that plans. One night, I took out my laptop and began reading the messages again. Every sentence felt like a punch, every emoji like a wound. Mia wrote, sometimes I wish things were different, that he was mine completely. David replied, soon, my love, one step at a time. My breath caught. Soon? One step at a time? What were they planning? The next morning, I made a decision. No more silence. No more pretending. But I needed to know everything first. I needed to see the whole picture. So I went to Mia's workplace. The design studio was small. White walls, soft lights, plants in every corner. A place that used to make me feel welcome. Now it felt like walking into someone else's dream. Mia saw me the moment I entered. Her smile disappeared instantly. She stood up, trembling. "Anna, what are you doing here?" I looked around. People stared. I kept my voice calm. "We need to talk." We stepped outside into the cold air. She crossed her arms, avoiding my eyes. "Please," she whispered, "don't do this here." "Then tell me," I said. "How long?" Tears filled her eyes. She shook her head as if trying to erase the truth. "Anna, it wasn't supposed to happen." "How long?" She swallowed hard. "Almost a year." A year. 12 months of lies. 365 days of betrayal. I felt something inside me break. Quietly, cleanly, like thin ice under a heavy step. Mia reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "No," I said. "You don't get to touch me." Her face crumpled. "I loved you, Anna. You're my sister. I never wanted to lose you." I let out a sad, bitter laugh. "You lost me the moment you touched him." I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. For the first time in years, she didn't try to. That evening, David came home later than usual. He smelled of cologne he never used around me. "Traffic," he said. I didn't answer. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, waiting. He walked past me, but I stopped him with one sentence. "David, I talked to Mia today." His body stiffened. Slowly, he turned around. What do you mean?" I stood up. "You know exactly what I mean." For a moment, the room went silent. The kind of silence that suffocates. Then he sighed and sat down. "Anna, I never meant to hurt you." I laughed. A short, sharp sound I barely recognized as mine. "You didn't mean to? You cheated on me for a year." He put his head in his hands. "I was lonely. You were always studying, working. Mia was there." I stared at him, stunned by the simplicity of his excuse. "So you destroyed our marriage because you were bored?" He didn't answer. Silence was louder than any confession. I realized then that I didn't want explanations. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want him. All I wanted was freedom from this nightmare. So I said the words I'd been carrying inside me for weeks. "I want a divorce." His head snapped up. "What? Anna, wait, we can fix this. We can go to therapy." "No," I said. "You had a year to fix things, and you chose her." He stood, reaching for me. I stepped back, just like I had with Mia. "I'm done, David." That night, I packed my bags. Just the essentials: clothes, documents, a few photos of my childhood, the only memories not tainted by betrayal. I closed the door behind me. It didn't feel like leaving. It felt like finally returning to myself. I moved in with my mother for a while. The first weeks were difficult. I cried often, slept little, thought too much. But each day, the weight grew lighter. Each sunrise felt less like a burden and more like a beginning. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about Mia or David in hours, then days, then weeks. Healing isn't loud. It's quiet, soft, slow, but it comes. Months later, I walked past a mirror and saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. A woman who survived. A woman who learned. A woman who knew her worth. And I smiled. Not because the past didn't hurt anymore, but because it no longer controlled me. They say betrayal always comes from the ones you trust the most. Maybe that's true. But healing comes from within. And I finally found mine. It had been a year since everything fell apart. A year since I last said his name out loud. David. Even the sound of it used to hurt. But time is strange. It doesn't erase things, it just makes them quieter. And so I built a new life in that silence. I moved to a smaller apartment. I started working again. Nothing big, just enough to feel useful. And I laughed again. Not every day, but sometimes. That was enough. Until one afternoon, I got an email. The sender's name almost made me drop my coffee. David Reynolds. I stared at the screen for minutes, maybe more. My heart wasn't racing, it was numb. There were only 6 words in his message. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I didn't reply. Not that day. I told myself I wouldn't reply at all. But that night, as I lay in bed, the words echoed inside my head. Can we talk? What could he possibly say now? What could I possibly want to hear? And yet, the next morning, I opened my laptop and I wrote one word. When? He answered almost immediately. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the old cafe. The old cafe. The one where we first met, where everything once felt easy, safe, unbreakable. I closed the laptop and sat there for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete the message and forget it ever existed. Another part wanted to know why. Why he reached out after all this time. I didn't sleep much that night. Memories have a way of sneaking back when you think you've buried them. By morning, I already knew what I would do. I got dressed. Simple jeans, a white shirt. Nothing that would make it look like I cared too much. But I did. And at 9:58 a.m., I stood in front of that cafe again. The bell above the door jingled as I walked in. And there he was. David. Same eyes. Same half smile. But something had changed. He looked older, quieter, maybe even broken in his own way. He stood up when he saw me. "You came," he said softly. I nodded. "You asked." And for a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore, just heavy, with everything unsaid. We sat across from each other, a small wooden table between us, the same table where we once shared Sunday mornings in quiet laughter. Now it felt like a wall. For a while, neither of us spoke. The sound of cups clinking and quiet conversations filled the air, but none of it reached us. Finally, David broke the silence. "I don't really know where to start," he said. I looked at him. "Try the truth." He exhaled. "I deserve that." He leaned back, his fingers tracing the edge of his cup. "When everything happened, I was scared. Not of losing you, of facing what I'd done." I said nothing. My silence made him uneasy, and I wanted it to. I thought time would make it easier, but it didn't. It just made the guilt heavier. I steadied him, the man who once knew every corner of my heart, now sitting across from me like a stranger. There was no anger left in me, only distance. "Why now?" I asked quietly. "Why reach out after all this time?" He hesitated. "Because I saw you," he said finally. "A few weeks ago. You were walking out of a bookstore. You looked happy, really happy. And it hit me that I'd never said what I needed to say." I frowned. "You've been following me?" "No," he said quickly. "It was a coincidence. But after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About you." His words hung in the air. Once I would have melted at them. Now they only made me tired. "I don't need an apology, David," I said. "You already gave me something better. Silence. Time. Space to heal." "I know," he whispered. "I just needed to tell you that I never stopped caring." I looked at him for a long moment. "Caring and loving are not the same thing," I said. He looked down. "I know that too." We both fell quiet again. For the first time, I noticed how gray his hair had become, how tired his eyes were. He wasn't the man I used to know, and maybe I wasn't the same woman either. "I didn't come here to open old wounds," he said. "I came to tell you that I'm sorry. Not for what I lost, but for what I took from you." Something in me softened then. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something close to peace. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "More than you think." He nodded slowly. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted to see you, to make sure you were okay." "I am," I said. "It took time, but I am." He smiled, a sad, fragile smile. "Good," he said. That's all I needed to hear. We sat there a few more minutes, saying nothing. Then I stood up. He did too. "Take care of yourself, David." "You too," he said. "Always." I turned and walked away. The bell above the door chimed behind me, the same sound that once marked our beginning. Now, it marked our end. Outside, the air felt lighter. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the past pressing against my chest. But as I walked down the street, I realized something I hadn't before. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Sometimes it means remembering without the pain. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face across that small cafe table. His eyes weren't lying, not this time. He was truly sorry, and that made it harder. Forgiving someone who doesn't deserve it is easy to avoid, but forgiving someone who finally understands what they've done, that's what breaks you. I turned on the lamp, reached for my journal, and opened a blank page. I hadn't written in months, not since I stopped needing to explain my pain to paper. But tonight, the words came easily. I saw him. He's changed. And somehow, I hate that it matters. I closed the notebook and sat still, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. It was strange how something can end twice and still not feel finished. The next morning, I went to work as usual. I thought I'd distract myself with routine, emails, calls, and meetings. But just before lunch, a delivery man stopped by my desk. "For you?" he said, handing me a small brown box. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything. Inside was a book. The same one David once gave me years ago, The Great Gatsby. I opened the cover. On the first page, his old handwriting was still there. "For when you forget how bright you are." But this time, below it, a new note. "For when you remember." I sat there, frozen. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was subtle, careful, but it shook me. Why send this? Why now, after our goodbye? Was it closure? Or a beginning disguised as one? That night, I found myself walking without a plan. The streets were quiet, painted with soft light from shop windows. And then, like a reflex, I ended up near his apartment building. I stopped across the street, hidden in the shadow of a tree. I told myself I just wanted to see, to confirm that the past really stayed where it belonged. But when I saw his window light flicker on, when I saw his silhouette move inside, I felt something I didn't expect. Not love, not anger, just a pull. I turned and walked away before he could notice me. But the walk home felt endless. Every step echoed with questions I didn't want to ask. Was I really healed? Or had I just built my peace on distance? Over the next few days, I tried to forget about it. But life has its ways of testing you. Because 3 days later, he called. Not an email, not a text, a call. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hi," I said, my voice quiet. "Hi," he said back. "I didn't mean to bother you. I wanted to thank you for meeting me." I hesitated. "You already did." "I know. I keep thinking about how we left things. I don't want to make the same mistakes again." "What do you mean?" I asked slowly. He paused, his voice softer now. "I mean, I'd like to see you again. Not to talk about the past, just to start from now." Silence. I didn't know what to say. "I'm not asking for anything," he continued. "I just thought maybe we could have coffee again, as two people who once knew each other." I closed my eyes. Every part of me screamed no, but somewhere deep inside, a quieter voice whispered, "What if?" "Let me think about it," I said finally. "Of course, no pressure." After the call ended, I sat there, the phone still in my hand. The city outside was alive and moving, but I felt completely still. Because sometimes it isn't the betrayal that breaks you. It's the possibility that maybe, just maybe, people can change. The next few days felt longer than they should have. I kept replaying that call in my mind. His tone, his pauses, the way he said, "Start from now." Like he wanted to rewrite a story that had already been finished. Pause 2. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't shame or secrecy. It was something harder to explain. It felt like holding a fragile piece of glass that I wasn't sure I wanted to drop or keep. Pause 2. On the 4th evening, I went back to the cafe. The same one. No message, no plan, just curiosity. Or maybe something weaker. I sat at our old table, ordered tea, and waited. Part of me hoped he wouldn't come. Part of me hoped he would. 10 minutes passed, then 15. And just when I started to think I'd imagined everything, he walked in. He looked surprised to see me there, almost like he hadn't dared to hope. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi," I replied. We didn't talk about the past this time. We talked about small things, work, books, the weather. The kind of safe topics people use when they're afraid to touch the truth. But somewhere in that conversation, something softened. I could see how time had changed him. Not just his face, but his presence. He was slower now, more careful with his words. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to run. When we stepped outside, the city was covered in golden light. He looked at me and said, "I know I have no right to ask for a second chance." I stopped him gently. "David," I said, "you're not asking for one, and I'm not giving one." He nodded slowly, understanding. What are we doing then? I smiled a little. We're two people who hurt each other once and are trying to see what's left after the pain. He exhaled. And what's left? I thought for a moment. Maybe just humanity, I said. And that's enough. We stood there in silence, watching the sunset melt behind the buildings. For the first time, the quiet between us wasn't heavy. It was calm. He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched my hand. Not like before, not with expectation, but with gratitude. When we finally said goodbye, it felt different this time. Not like an ending, not like a beginning, just peace. I walked home under the fading light, feeling the weight of the day dissolve with every step. No tears, no regrets. Only the soft understanding that some stories don't need to end in love, they just need to end in truth. That night, I opened my journal again and wrote, I saw him again, and for the first time, I didn't see the man who broke me. I saw the man who taught me how strong I had to become. I closed the notebook and smiled, not because it was over, but because I finally knew it didn't define me anymore. They say the hardest part of healing isn't letting go of someone else. It's letting go of the version of yourself that needed them. And that's what I did.
Sometimes pain doesn't come from enemies, but from the ones we trusted the most. Maybe that's how life teaches us to see the truth. Could you forgive such a betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. More stories are coming, stories that will touch your heart.